Welcome to the launch of Honda's new CB1100 RS, CB1100 EX, and this, the Honda Rebel.
So okay, this is the Honda Rebel, otherwise known as the CMX500. Now, don't laugh at the name. Okay, laugh a bit, because it is daft. The Rebel is about as rebellious as a trifle. But this isn't the first or even the only Honda Rebel. In the US, which is the home of the cruiser, they've also got a Rebel 300, and they've had a 250 Rebel and a 450 Rebel on and off since the mid-80s. Nice! Anyway, this is the first time the Honda Rebel has come up against the good old British cynicism. So, assuming you care, what is a Honda Rebel? Well, the motor is the A2 license-friendly 471cc parallel twin, borrowed from the CB500R and the CB500F, and they've been around since 2013. The Rebel makes the same claimed 45 horsepower and the same 32 pound-foot of torque, but it's delivered about 1,000 RPM lower in the rev range, which, according to Honda's press bump, constitutes strong bottom-end torque. Strong bottom-end torque? Okay, all things are relative. Other strong bottom-end torques are available. Chassis-wise, the Rebel is all new. It's got a steel tube frame, 41mm showers, Nissin 2-pot caliper on a single disc, a couple of preload-only rear shocks. It's pretty basic spec, but here's the thing, it kind of works. Now, obviously, the Rebel's not going to rip anyone's arms off with its world-shattering torque. It's far too polite for that. This is a mild-mannered, meek, civilised machine. For a Rebel, it's pretty timid. But as a motorbike, dynamically, it works. It's fun, it's funky, it has a sense of humour, which is just as well because you'll need one, and the motor's immensely thrashable. Ride the Rebel with a ham fist, as we can see demonstrated here by this idiot, and the chassis bounces around and suspension dampen clings on for dear life, but it sticks the tyres to the road. The brake is strong, and there's decent ground clearance for this style of bike. So let's just sit back and watch how the Honda Rebel copes with a numpty at the controls. So price-wise, the Honda Rebel comes in at $5,399, which compares to, well, there's not an awful lot out there in the micro bobber range. The nearest is probably the Kawasaki Vulcan S, which I can't pretend I've ridden. The spec's 650cc, it's a parallel twin, it's making about 60 odd horsepower, which is more than the Rebel, so it's a beefier bike, and it costs more. It's $6,299 against the Rebel's $5,399. So the Honda has this end of the market, whatever that market is, to itself. And now for a bit of a change of pace. This is the Autodromo Barcelona, just outside Barcelona. Now, it's a bonkers place. It's a 2 kilometre banked concrete oval circuit. It was built in 1922. It was only raced on a few times. Last used in the 1950s, and since then it's been, of all things, a chicken farm. So this concrete track with its vertical banking, crumbling, it's bumpy, but it's still rideable, and I'm guessing Honda don't want us to use it as a metaphor for their revamped CB1100 EX and the new CB1100 RS.
So, well, you're going to be there anyway. There we go. This is Simon Hargreaves.
So, Let's talk about the CB1100 RS first, because it's the most interesting CB and the most fun to ride if you're of a sporting persuasion. It uses the air-cooled 1140cc inline-4 from the previous CB1100, and it's still making around about 88 bhp. Now, that's not a hugely impressive figure, but the fact is, when you're trying to squeeze an air-cooled motor through Euro 4 emissions and noise regs, one of the things you're going to have to give up is horsepower. Anyway, to add a bit of character in place of performance, Honda have phased the CB's cam timing. So cylinders 1 and cylinder 2 have different cam profiles to cylinders 3 and 4. The idea being this gives the CB an offbeat, grufty sort of sound, which, to be fair, you could easily mistake for a kind of a misfire, or it's as if the carbs need balancing, except of course the CB's fuel injected. The CB1100 RS's chassis is the thing that really sets it apart. 43mm shower forks with dual bending valve technology. Stop sniggering. Basically, it looks like a shim stack, so at best it's an adaptation of existing fork technology. Now, I've no idea how it's better than any other fork, but I bet somewhere along the line it's cheaper to make. Looks nice though. Mind you, another nice touch is the radial 4-pot Tikikos. So what's the CB Go like? Well, it's good. It's typically steady Honda ride quality. The steering's a bit front-end heavy because the flattish bars plonk you right over the front, and the bike feels a little bit overtired. It needs a bit of a shove to get it to turn, but once it's online, it's neutral, it's stable, it's going where you point it. The motor is a big, boomy thing. It's got some go in it, and it's nice to short shift about working the gearbox, which is just as well because the CB feels a bit oddly geared. The first CB1100 in 2013 had 5 gears. Honda threw 6th in as an overdrive a year later. As a result, the 1100 RS feels like 5th and 6th are kind of both top gears. They're both cruising gears, and to find any decent roll-on acceleration you've got to go down to 4th or sometimes even 3rd, which is a bit unexpected with an 1100cc motor. But the engine is smooth, grufty cams aside, and whatever it goes like, it looks cock on. The CB1100 RS costs a grand total of 11,139 of your hard-earned, which is pretty premium dollar, and it's more than a Triumph Thruxton R or a BMW R9T racer. And with the retirement of Yamaha's XJR 1300 racer, they're kind of the Honda's main rivals. Both the Thruxton and the BM are a bit more racer, and the Honda's just that bit more cafe. Speaking of Olay, here's the CB1100 EX. Now, this is an update to the existing EX, which is the Chrome Classic version of the CB1100. So this bike has the same engine and frame as the RS, but has a steel swing arm, more classic style forks and shocks, 18-inch wire-spoked wheels on skinnier tyres, and a more upright riding position. The EX has a very different riding vibe to the RS. It's lazier, it's less focused, the steering's less demanding, and it's less sure-footed. To me, it feels a bit bouncy and soft, sort of boinging about when you start cracking on. But then cracking on's not what the EX is about. It's a retro. It's not millions of miles evolved from bikes like Kawasaki's Zephyr 1100 of the early 90s, which I suppose when you think about it is probably what a retro is supposed to be. Anyway, the EX costs £10,765, so it's a little bit cheaper than the CB1100 RS, and that kind of wraps it up for the Honda Rebel and the CB1100's RS and EX.